Hi all, welcome to the Keptn developer meeting. Today is March 10th, and thanks a lot to everyone who joined the call. I guess this is the last meeting before we have a time zone change hell. So please, it's actually one topic I wanted to discuss. What time we keep, UTC or Central European time for this meeting? Because I believe everyone expects Central European time, but yeah, I just wanted to confirm it explicitly.
If possible, yes, I would suggest keep it Central European time.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it impacts just one meeting, unless you are based in countries that do not change time zones, like Russia, some US and Australian states, if I recall correctly. So I think that we can just keep Central European time, taking the majority of contributors. So Mac, Ultrash, is it fine with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be wild because we're changing this weekend, and so we'll have 2 weeks where we're changed and you're not. So, but it's just a matter of figuring out the logistics of the clock. No problem with the time.
Okay. So what else do we have on our agenda? So
There, good to see you.
Okay, so let's glance through news. So Keptn new patch releases.
Yes, so we just released 2 patch versions, one for 12 and 13. But unfortunately, we discover another small problem to our system to be distributed. There is always some hidden problem about communication timing between different messages. And therefore, we will also follow up with another patch release for 13 and 12 to also fix these small problems with the distributor that they can get out of sync with nets.
How severe it is for users?
Not much, because they just need to restart the service in the worst case if they cannot connect back to NATs. But still, it's not a nice experience for them. So we will provide a patch release to fix this problem, but not severe. There is no lost data nor anything else.
Okay, thank you. So at the moment, we won't announce these patch releases, right? Until it's fully fixed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The fix is in progress. So we would expect for Monday to do the release.
Yeah. Thank you. So the next one, maintainers will be added to the Dynatrace environment.
Yes, so Dynatrace donated to the Keptn community one environment that we can use in order to monitor our integration tests. So I will invite all the maintainers of the project to this environment. So whenever they trigger any integration test run, then they can see the results of the monitoring in this Dynatrace environment to help debugging issues.
Okay, so speaking of that, I created a folder for project infrastructure. So maybe when we create new infrastructure components, it makes sense to just put some really small write-up here, so that people know that at least it exists.
Yes.
And I have an action item to actually document what we already have, or maybe I will create tickets.
At the moment, I will update the wiki page for the instructor to add a new maintainer. What are the steps to do? But I can also support you to write this document.
Well, I can just reference it. So basically, this is here on wiki. Is it here?
I think it's in the Keptn community. Where is it? There is somewhere a document where it says the steps for adding a maintainer to the organization. I don't know exactly where. I need to look
community membership. So I believe there are steps. Okay, I need to look for that too, because I'm not aware that this is documented somewhere. Okay, so if you send me a link later, it would be awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. And yeah, it's nice to have this environment because yeah, integration testing for us is going to be more and more complicated with all the services being added. But this is a good problem to have. Okay, next, Keptn is accepted to Google Summer of Code. So now fully official. So we participate, we are listed on the website, and basically we already have potential contributors reaching out. So this year it's not about students. So this year even professionals can participate. Yeah, so we're here. All the documentation is in place. We gradually extend it based on the feedback. I will be submitting another pull request. But what is important is 2022 project ideas. So this is what we have on the table now, 7 ideas. And for every idea, we still look for potential mentors, and there's still time frame to submit new project ideas if you're interested to do so. So just keep it in mind. And thanks a lot to everyone who participated in the application phase, because yeah, GSoogle is a competitive program. Less than 50% of organizations are accepted, and it's great to have Keptn accepted this year.
So are we also proposing to Google Summer of Docs, or is that official, or is it unofficial, or what's with that?
I think we should at least discuss that. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen again. So here there is a project idea by Meha already created. So basically a result of the discussion. So, and if you have a project idea, if we have potential mentors, then I think we should apply. So Google Season of Docs is a counterpart of Summer of Code, which focuses on documentation. We participated in Jenkins once, and actually it was quite a good experience. So if someone is willing to participate and be a mentor there, let's just do it. Sorry, I'll shut down my Slack. Okay. Does it answer your question, Mac?
Yes, I'll talk to you later. I've got a couple other ideas to throw in there for it.
Mm-hmm. So if anyone has well, we have plenty of ideas what we can do with our documentation. Yeah, I mean, there are various opinions from radical to very radical ones. So yeah, any ideas are welcome.
How many votes are the way it is?
Well, it keeps Giovanni busy and many other contributors.
Yeah. There's some really good stuff in there, actually. There's some, parts of it that I'm impressed with the writing. The structure's the problem, so.
Okay. So Mac is working on a proposal how we could restructure tutorials and other documentation. So once, yeah, I guess we could put it public soon. Okay. So let's proceed with next item. So there was a topic from Rajiv about Keptn documentation site revamp, but Rajiv is not on the call. So I guess we can either skip it or put it into the end of the meeting if he joins. Yeah. And meanwhile, welcome Urhash, welcome Dipaya, if I pronounce it correctly. So
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
hi everyone.
Thanks for your interest. If you would like to briefly introduce yourself, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So hi, my name is Utkarsh, and I'm working with Cisco, and like I have like a lot of interest working with cloud native applications and tools. So therein I got into this open source contribution. I have been contributing to this community since 2 years now, and Keptn is one of the application that I have worked as a POC a couple of years ago, and that is where I was introduced to Keptn project. And this time when I saw that they are going to create something from the scratch, the integration, with the backstage. So that is what got my interest into it. So that is where I want to explore like how we can create an integration for a tool from the scratch. So yeah.
Great. Thanks for your interest. And yeah, hopefully we can deep dive in the project. So we can do it probably later today, if you're fine with that. So we can run through the agenda and then just do deep dive with discussion. Would it be
Yeah,
fine
sure,
with you?
sure. Yeah.
Okay. So then we can proceed with our regular demos. Andrei, would you like to start?
Sure. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully you're receiving this. Good. Yeah. So, sorry. Good. Yeah. So the first two are bug fixes. The first is we experience a segmentation fault in his Helm service, where actually the Helm service tried to proceed. We had actually unresolved error where the Helm charts when the Helm charts had loading problems, then actually the code just moved on and experienced a segmentation fault. So this was found out by Diego Braga. We discussed it and it's already fixed. So it should be available in the next release. Yeah, the second thing was actually more of a refactoring. There were some minor problems with error messages which were doubled. Yeah, upon that, we actually refactored the secret service and also the Shipyard Controller, which was actually we uniformed all the error messages and the handling of the error messages. So now it should be quite clean and easy to use for the next new error messages or new contributors. Yeah, and the future thing, actually from now we support the authentication to remote Git repository via proxy server. Actually, this can be known from community users from, for example, GitHub configurations. So as you can configure a Git proxy through a normal Git command, and this will be your configuration. So all the traffic from your local repository to your Git remote repository will be routed through a proxy server. So actually we support this also in Keptn for now. We added some, this is an example of using the CLI. So when creating a project, you add the parameters at git user, git token, git remote URL, as already known. But additionally, you can also add git proxy URL with the URL and the port. And also there are options to use the insecure connection as well as in GitHub proxy, like here, SSL verify. This actually skips the SSL verification, and also the git proxy user and git proxy password.
I have a question for this. Is the git proxy URL parameter in the CLI mandatory or is it optional?
It's optional.
Okay.
It's not mandatory. It's only optional when you want to use the git proxy and route your traffic through the proxy server.
Okay, thank you.
So if you use it, that is up to you. You can actually do not need to use it. Like it's implemented for the GitHub repository, for example.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Probably not. So, thank you. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, I think I'm next, right? Can you hear me? I'm hearing myself. All right. Just a second. Okay, I have two pull requests today that I want to show you. So the first one is in the API for the uniform subscription. So Giovanni already mentioned this. So we had a bug there where in some cases the subscriptions for an already registered uniform might have been lost. So basically, let's really quickly look at the faulty code here. So yeah, as you can see here on the left side, if the version of the integration that's re-registering itself has changed, then we just re-registered the integration, and in that process also overwriting any subscriptions that might have been set up. So the way this was fixed now was to just update the version info specifically if the version information has changed. So therefore only these properties have been changed without overwriting any other configuration that might be available for this integration. Any questions about that? All right, if not, let's continue with the next one. So this is about the Shipyard Controller. This was quite a big pull request, so I'm not going through all the changes here, but basically what was that about? I think I've teased it in one of the recent developer meetings. So basically we had to implement a new data model for the Shipyard Controller, or for representing the sequence execution states, in order to have a thread-safe model, which in turn will allow us to have multiple replicas of Shipyard Controller. And yeah, so previously the state was more or less spread across a set of different collections in MongoDB, but now we managed it to aggregate all the information that we need for execution of a particular sequence into a document that lives within one collection. And this also made the code for the Shipyard Controller a lot easier, and hopefully also in turn more robust and more maintainable. Of course, if you want to have a detailed look at the changes that have been made here, you can, of course, go to this pull request, and if you might have any follow-up questions, you can always approach me, and I'm happy to answer questions that you might have. Any questions about that?
One note from my side. We have that README markdown file for the Shipyard Controller, where we currently describing the old structure and the old MongoDB collections and so on. I think we should also, with a future pull request, update this one, either delete it if we don't have a new one, or update it to the new model. Or did you already
absolutely,
do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, this pull request has gotten quite big, so
yeah.
I guess that was overlooked.
We should not forget it, because maybe people are reading.
Definitely create a follow-up PR. All right. If there are no further questions, I will hand over to the next person.
I think Utkarsh is your turn.
Actually, I just wanted to discuss like what needs to be done for that integration.
Yes. So, yeah, one thing we could do is just once we finish the demos part, we can just deep dive in GSoogle projects. Would it be fine with you?
Yes,
So
that
that
is totally
we
fine.
have as much time as we need for the discussion.
Yep.
Okay, so I just moved it to the bottom, and yeah, thanks. Okay, then Bernd.
Thank you. Hopefully screen sharing is working. Let's see. You see my screen?
Yes.
Good. What do I have prepared? These four little things here. First of all, I kind of restructured the packet structure of the distributor. Why? Because we had there kind of a very, very flat structure, which actually didn't make sense at all. This has historical reasons and so on. What I've just did, and that you can see in the pictures depicted here in the PR, and just made the packages way more smaller and tried to assemble them to their responsibilities. Like for example, you have a forwarder package where you just have the code for the forwarder or the model or things related to NUTS connectivity and so on. In general, I would propose to take a little bit of focus also in other modules of Keptn Core to think about restructuring a bit our package structure, because it makes certain things a little bit cleaner. You don't have name clashes and so on, and we can follow more or less more best practices which are used in respect to that in the Go universe, I would say. I also asked in our Slack channel if we could have a discussion on what are the current best practice when it comes to package design in Go. I can, if you want, prepare or put together some notes there, and we can discuss what is applicable to our Keptn Core repo and what we should or don't want to do. But for now, I just did it on the distributor thing, and it already had a benefit when for a testing code where we can now write the test function without having clashes in other tests where the same test function is already been used and so on. So it already now pays off in the testing code. So this one is merged. Next one is a CLI feature I've recently added. I think Giovanni in one of our past meetings did present the OAuth SSO feature of the CLI. This was finished back then, and one thing which was left to do was to trigger the authorization code flow automatically when, for example, the refresh token is expired. So what already did work was refreshing the access token when this one expired. So this was already taken care of in the background. But when you are in a situation that you cannot use the refresh token to refresh the access token anymore, you had to basically execute the Keptn out command manually again. Now with this pull request, this happens basically automatically. There's one, I would say, hiccup in implementation. So it basically works. what I did not found out how to do properly, and it's stated here in the command. So what we are looking here is actually the kind of factory method which gives us back a ready-to-use HTTP client, which is configured to use OAuth in the background. Once, however, once you have logged in using OAuth or OpenID, then you are in a situation where you're relying on a valid refresh token. If that's not the case, I didn't find a way to verify whether the refresh token is actually valid. So the OAuth providers we haven't used don't give you this information. Actually, it gives you the information for the access token, but not for the refresh token. So if this one is actually expired, I have no way to find it out, but to just use the client for one single dummy call. In this case, I've used the client to execute a HTTP head call to the token endpoint, which was used for getting the access token. And if this fails, we can just assume in the CLI code here that there might be something wrong with the refresh token. If that's the case, I would just hit the OAuth authenticator again, calling the auth method with all the client values. And what will this trigger then in the end is it will, again, open the local web browser, asks you for credentials, etc., and in the end you will end up with a fresh refresh token and access token, and you can continue to use the CLI as usual. It works. It's kind of guessing what, or I'm just assuming that this was the error. Could also be another error. I didn't find another way yet. Room for improvement. If somebody has any idea how to do it properly, I also researched a little bit online, and there also just was the suggestion, you need to hit an endpoint to see if it works or not if the word provider don't give you the information, which is the case most of the time, or if not every time. Of course, unit tests are there, and a little bit of cleanup, nothing worth to actually look at. Then, questions to that? If not, I will continue.
Bernd, can I jump in for a second?
Jump.
Because I have a question not related to the pull request or to the feature, but very close to the topic itself. Because yesterday I was playing around with the Keptn auth command, and there I realized that we have the flag --"oauth -client secret.
Yeah.
Does this mean that we support the client credentials flow in the CLI?
No, we don't support it. So what I've did while implementing the OAuth authorization code flow is to try it in the end out with our Dynatrace, SSO, Google, OAuth provider, or Microsoft, and so on. And what I've seen is that while we are not required to give a client secret to our, for example, Dynatrace SSO provider, we are required, for example, for Google. So the OAuth flow did just not work without giving also the client secret. So I just added also this possibility. If you will not send it there, it gives you back, or even a message like missing client secret. Once you give it a client secret, the authorization code flow works.
Got it.
It's
okay.
optional. If the OAuth provider requires you to put it there, then just use it. If it works without, then just skip it.
Good. Thanks.
Good. Then we have a little one. I already have it open here. that should be the last little unit test in the distributor, which was kind of flaky. It was failing 1 out of 50 times or so. I just did an experiment, if that's the case, by just executing the tests, and indeed we have here on the 38th run just a test failure, not a failure in the distributor code, but just a hiccup in the testing code. And also here at the 87th run, we also had the same issue. In the end, I don't even know what was the fix. This is quite some time ago. Don't know if it makes sense to take a look at that, but there was something wrong with comparing events out of a map or slice which had different orderings from run to run. So we just assumed that the ordering will be the same each run, which was not the case from time to time, and I just fixed that. And as you can see, with the fixed code, then all of the runs until the 100th did pass through without a problem. So that should again make our pipeline a little bit more stable, because we don't have flaky tests. Then, which is not yet merged but already approved by Florian and André, was an issue we've discovered also on the distributor side, where it was the case that actually if you have running your integrations on the control plane and you restart the nuts broker, it could be the case, and it was the case, we've discovered it the hard way, that actually the nuts client connection used by the distributor was in a state where it was not properly connected anymore. It was in a closed state already, because it did exceed the number of retry attempts, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Flo, but I think it's 20 or something like that. So it's, by default, the library we are using is trying to reconnect 20 times if you are having a downtime, which exceeding the, I think 20 times 2 seconds or something like that of nuts, then this connection we are using in or we are caching actually in the distributor code somewhere here, pub-sub connections. It's just a string of topics as a map of topic to the actual client. This client for the respective topic used is not usable anymore. It's in a closed state because it lost connection and it will not work again. Fix was very easy. Max reconnects -1 will indefinitely try to reconnect until it has a connection again. So fix was easy, and the little bit bigger part is here actually the test, where we kind of indirectly test the behavior of the library, if it's behaving correctly, what we assumed to be the bug or not. For example, here we adjust for a specific topic, setting the max reconnect to just 1 with a very small reconnect wait time, and shutting down nuts for that time so that it's exceeding this time here. So we are dealing now really with a client that lost connection and is in its closed state, thus not usable anymore, and we then later on just verify that we indeed didn't receive an event using that specific client, but we received an event that was not altered that way, which has in the code of course the -1 parameter, which means reconnect indefinite time amount of time. Yeah, nice that we could test it using a unit test, not an integration test. This will be merged today, I guess, and then we will also need to provide a backboard for that, and I will also test it on a cluster as well. I think that was the last topic from my side. If there is no question, it's your turn, Klaus. Now I just need to figure out how to stop sharing. Yes, good.
Okay.
The demo.
Let me share my screen. Okay. So for me, mostly bug fixes for the bridge. So for example, the quick filter was not showing all elements if you expand it. So if you go here and click the view more for the services, for example, there was a bug that there were 2 scroll bars, and if the window size or the width was too small, the second scroll bar disappeared, and then it looked like, yeah, the other elements are not here. And yeah, this is fixed now. There's just 1 scroll bar now. If you minimize it and click view more, there's just 1 scroll bar and all elements are shown of this. Yeah, all services are shown of it. Yeah, this was just a CSS fix, nothing more. That's for a quick filter part. The next thing was a bug that we had some duplicated sequences. So if a sequence was selected and the page, or if it's accessed by a sequence, the page, then there was the case that the sequence selected here was also at the bottom here. So it was 2 times, and this also broke the show older sequences functionality because it took the latest sequence and this was the duplicated one of this one. So this is also fixed by now. The third bug, limitation is for the URL. There we had the case that we supported adding spaces in the URL, but this led to some weird behaviors and also for fetching the webhook again, that the URL or something was broken, not showing correctly. The fix is not just limit that it cannot contain spaces. And also if the webhook YAML file already contains spaces in the URL, it is correctly returned with the space, but you cannot save it anymore because you have spaces in the URL. And that's basically it. Maybe a really minor thing, we just adjusted this message here, that it doesn't go to the documentation side. Instead, it goes to the service creation side where you can create a service. And if you create a service, it'll create it and redirect back where you come from. So the environment screen, and that's basically it. So that's from my side. So then I will hand over to Elisabeth.
Thank you. I will keep it short and simple. The trigger sequence for bridge is finally merged. We put in a lot of effort in PR review to make it more stable and remove the remaining bugs that were in it. So as you can see, there were a lot of commits added and comments added, which is now everything is fixed and it's ready to release. So it will be in the next release. That's all from my side. I think Ermin is next.
thanks. Yeah, I will also present just one bug fix from my side for Keptn's bridge. So previously in the evaluation details, we displayed the score without decimals, and that happened in some corner cases to show, for example, 33 is less than 33, but actually the result was with decimals, and therefore, yeah, we extended that. And what I also did, so we show now 2 decimals, up to 2 decimals here in the details and also in the breakdown. So here on the right side, for example, we have the score. There we also show up to 2 decimals for the score. Yeah, actually, that's also all from my side. And if there are no questions, I'm handing over to Utkarsh.
No questions from me. So I guess we have 2 topics focused on GSOC, so backstage integration with Keptn and Keptn documentation site revamp. So we have 20 minutes left. Let's start from time box and it's 10 minutes for each project, and then if needed, we can proceed further. Okay. And yeah, thanks to everyone for the demos. So yeah, you're welcome to stay, especially if you're interested in backstage integration, because I think it's an interesting topic. But if not, it's also perfectly fine. Okay, should we proceed?
Yep, sure.
Okay, so maybe you would like to briefly summarize your current research and what are the obstacles you experienced?
Yeah, so I did like investigation on Backstage, like what it does, what is the objective of that application. So that is basically a cataloging tool for all the microservices. And what it does, it tries to solve the problem of a developer. Like in a microservice environment, we have a lot of teams that has accountability for a lot of different components, services. So what Backstage does, it helps them to for the service discovery and cataloging them on a single website. So that is what Backstage does. And I'm not sure like what we want to want to achieve with the Keptn integration. Like there can be multiple scenarios. Like one thing is we want to test the like quality gate of those services. The other thing can be like if you want to check the healthy status or something, using the multi-stage deployment strategy of the Keptn. So yeah.
Yeah, so actually it's a good question. Maybe it makes sense to clarify how Google Summer of Code operates. Because in Google Summer of Code, the approach is that organizations, potential mentors, provide a list of ideas that could be worked on. So for example, here, do you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see.
So Keptn plugin for Backstage. So basically, this is initial idea we have. It's quite abstract, and it's quite abstract deliberately because what would be actually done is to be defined. So how it could work, you just start discussing with the community, you do your own research and come up with the proposal, what actually you would like to address in your project. Here, the challenge is that to some extent, it's already happening idea. So we have Keptn Sandbox. Sorry, I should finally disable the home screen in Internet Explorer. So here there is Backstage. plugin. It was created by Marcel about 1 month ago, but after that the project wasn't very active, but it's already a POC you could try out. So you can see that it creates some integrations, some dashboards, but obviously there is a lot more that could be done with the Backstage plugin. So for example, me, Jürgen, and Andres had a meeting with Dmitry Maitin, who is one of potential mentors in this project. And we had a lot of discussions how we actually provide a dashboard for blue-green deployment so that you can monitor blue-green deployment status on multiple environments inside Backstage. And they rely on Keptn as an engine. So I asked Dmitry to share this example, but the point is that even if you have some dashboards, there is a lot of other functionality that could be added to Backstage. So my suggestion here, how to start, would be to just try it out, to see what's there, to explore Keptn use cases, and then see what use cases you're interested in, and basically come up with the proposal how you could extend these use cases better. Does it make sense for you?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So this idea definitely needs extended. At least we need to have a warning that there is already a work in progress thing. And we definitely need to have GitHub issues there with ideas, with requests. I will poke people about that again. But ultimately, it's up to you to come up what other areas you would like to address.
Yep.
And well, this is how GSoogle works, and I hope this is an interesting approach. So we can discuss in the community. So you mentioned quality gates. It could be one of the options. Managing auto remediation is also an option. Just visualizing SLIs, SLOs, maybe with some analytics, Grafana integration, it could be also an option. So just whatever you're interested in.
Okay.
And yeah, for example, one of items which could be considered. So currently there is a pending pull request for manual triggering of sequences. And I guess it could be also be implemented on the Backstage part in theory, who knows?
Yeah, so like what I'll do, I'll just look at the like whatever work is done in the Backstage plugin that is out there at the GitHub.
Yep.
And that will give me some insight on like how we can proceed.
Yeah. So ideally how it would happen, you come up with the proposal, then if project gets accepted, there will be still community bonding phase in May. And as a part of community bonding, mentors and mentees and the community actually review the proposal and come up with actual plan. So this will be definitely a phase when we can do, for example, community surveys, asking what features you would like to see in Backstage, etc. And this is something to keep in mind that your proposal isn't slated to be in stone. It still can evolve later. So it's perfectly fine to just do your research, come up with your ideas, and then we can see how they map. And we can also do user survey, etc., to come up with actually practical plan of what we want to deliver.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Does it answer your question?
Yep. Absolutely.
And thanks again for your interest, because yeah, we used the Backstage a bit at my previous work, and I think it's a great tool. I'm not sure whether we already used it at Dynatrace, but yeah, I think that it would be nice to have a deeper integration.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next topic, Rajiv, would you like to take over? Is he on the call?
I think he's still not here.
Well, Dipayan wanted to discuss Keptn documentation site revamp too. So we can still briefly discuss this topic. Is it fine with everyone? Okay. So I'm not sure if your microphone is working now. It doesn't seem to according to the status. I will just briefly go through this project ID and discuss where we are. Okay. So we have new documentation site engine project idea, and I think it basically consists of two parts. So one part is the engine, and this is what we propose for Google Summer of Code. Mike actually already has a lot of feedback about the current implementation. So Mike, if you want to summarize your experiences, just go ahead.
Well, of course, search engine is a problem, and I'm amazed that it's I don't know how people find anything in there, frankly.
In Google.
But yeah, really. And boy, I'm finding Keptn in a box comes up at the top of every search at Google and YouTube, which is a problem. One of the big changes that I would like to that I'm proposing is I would like to have good reference pages for all the files that people use and have those together in the reference section. I think what's there for, at least structurally, for commands and API is decent. But the files are in READMEs and blobs, which I spent the day trying to figure out where those blob files are, etc. But that's a big thing. I would like to split the getting started, the installation, I'd like to have one document, perhaps with an accompanying video for each Kubernetes option that there is, and this is how you install it. And then have the tutorials be on specific topics, quality gates to measure response time or something like that. Just to make it smaller, I looked at those. They are all, I got intimidated when I started trying to read through them, and they were too long. And the other thing that I'm noticing is there's a lot of this, do this, do that, do that, do that. And at the end of the day, even if I'm successful, I haven't learned much. I've just copied a bunch of commands. There's a lot of places where just an additional sentence would be very, very helpful. That would say, we're going to populate this file, which does such and such. At the beginning of the tutorial, say, what are we trying to do with this part of it? So I'm looking at a lot of that. There is a lot of really good information docs. I'm also not sure what's happening with releases. I have a strong hunch that we are just doing a mass copy and shoving stuff over. And some question, I'm not sure I understand in the current docs. We have the concepts section, we have the quick start, and a couple of other things that are not release specific, and then we have all the stuff that's release specific. That's another thing with the reference pages. Definitely want those to be specific, because each reference page should have a section on it that says differences between versions, also for commands. Reference pages, I cut my eye teeth on man pages in Unix, but they should be copiously complete. And we should have a record of this flag is only available in release such and such and forward. And before that, you couldn't do this, or before that, you did it this way, or whatever. But then the reference pages work for all releases, and we update them each time, as necessary with new features. So that's some of my thoughts. I'm still getting started here, and the one thing I'm not 100% sure, because I'm a writer, and writers are notorious for, we want it all in our documentation set. And it may be that some of this material that I would like to see in the documentation set, because it would just look nice, really does belong in README files, etc., in the repos, close to where it's used. So I'll be looking for a lot of feedback on that. And please feel free to tell me, because just because I am an obnoxious writer, it doesn't mean that I don't know about the problem with obnoxious writers who try to do too much. So
Yeah, so we had kind of ad hoc knowledge transfer last week about tutorials, but we also deep
Yes.
dive into the site structure. So one of our intents is to actually introduce real documentation as code, when all documentation is basically located where your code is located. And when you submit a pull request, you can also basically you edit documentation and code and test automation in the same repository when possible. And then there is a magic tooling which actually aggregates this documentation. And for this magic tooling, we are currently looking at Entera. So it's one of the projects focused on ASCII Doctor that actually helps a lot with aggregating documentation from multiple repositories. So it's actually how it was created. So you can reference multiple repositories, versions, tags, branches from there. And then as a tooling, it can just aggregate everything. It can also do preview features. It can also do staging repositories. And it can also, well, assuming that we had some kind of authentication for documentation, we can also hide content, have feature flags for the content if you wish. But yeah, it's definitely not something we would need for Keptn. But we could, for example, stage unreleased versions and have a flag that you can open documentation for version that is yet to be released. And we can create this documentation incrementally when we develop new features. So the engine is quite good. It adds some complexity for documentation management, but I think for the content, it would be much better. And for GSOC, actually implementing this engine would be something I would suggest. So basically having call the automation. So there are GitHub actions for Enter. We will also likely need to integrate Pandoc so that we can move over Markdown content. So it's one of the holy wars in the documentation community, what you use, either Markdown or ASCII Doctor. Markdown is really simple. ASCII Doctor is much more sophisticated out of the box, so it supports macros, it supports includes, well, it supports even scripting languages if you really, really need that, which is not the case. But
much better cross-referencing capabilities.
Yeah, awesome.
But let's not scare people, because I've had 2 or 3 people tell me, but I know how to do Markdown, and ASCII Doctor for doing basic coding is very similar to Markdown. There's a few things that are, you use. Although I think you said Antora now recognized, but you use 2 equal signs for a second level heading rather than 2 hashtags. But for most of the basic stuff, for people to write in it, it's not bad.
Right, and we will still need a kind of conversion logic. So, for example, when we are moving Jenkins wiki to ASCII Doctor or Markdown, we created a converter service. Here, we would also need some kind of automation so that we won't force developers to actually migrate all the content to ASCII Doctor to have this documentation published as it used to be. So, hopefully, it will be minimum impact on Keptn contributors, but we might move some content over, especially to integration services. So, for example, Prometheus tutorials would likely go to Prometheus service, etc. And yeah, it would require some collaboration with maintainers. But once it's done, I hope it will be a much better experience for everyone, and we definitely won't need to maintain so many versions anymore.
I have two questions actually. One is so I guess Antora supports some form of version drop down then, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then also, do you have some example documentation page that uses Antora that we can have a look at with open source repos?
I actually started working on a POC, but yeah, Antora has already quite a lot of reference implementations.
Okay, nice.
So Antora is quite popular in the Kubernetes community. When Hugo is not enough, you usually go to Antora.
Yeah. Yes, it would be great if you could add some project that uses Antora actually in like in production, basically.
The cross references. One of the problems that we've got right now is the internal file. Well, not the internal. It's on the URL. the file name for all those files has the release in it. So one of the first things I discovered was all these broken references because they were going to release 0.8. And I think that just got pulled out of the set. And Tora will cross-reference a file. It has the notion of you have a latest version and then you have your earlier versions, and its cross-referencing are going to stay within that version. So if we didn't make any changes, still the old version would still cross-reference files in that version of the docs, and the new one would cross-reference the new version, which would be a tremendous help. Although I think people have done some scripts in the last week or so to pick up some of that, so it's not so bad. But
yeah, so I shared a link to the public demo, so you can see that there is Antora playbook. So basically, it's a configuration file, which actually shows how to arrange the content. So basically, it grabs the things together. So for example, here it takes two components, one from head, another one from multiple branches, and puts them in docs. So for each branch, it will have an entry point. And also there is a lot of things, plus some UI bundles, which configures the interface. Obviously, for production grade, it would be quite a long YAML file, but yeah, it should be still feasible. So I hope that I will finally publish a POC I started working with. And my POC will be published just to GitHub pages with some GitHub actions. So even if the engine is complex, we will use the common static site tooling. So in principle,
cool. Yeah. Nice. Okay, thanks. I need to leave for the next meeting. So
yeah, sorry for going over time, but yeah, thanks to Mike for deep dive, and thanks to everyone. So
thanks. Bye bye.
Hopefully we will have a POC soon. Okay.
Look forward to it.
Sorry, Mike?
Oh, I just said we're looking forward to that POC.
Yeah, well, I wanted to publish it quite a while ago, but yeah, then emergencies with
I know,
all
copious
this
free
incubation.
time, yeah. Yes. Yeah, well, when you get it up there, I'll help. You don't have to do all the writing part of it, but you have to do the tools part. I don't do tools.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. And yeah, Utkarsh, do you have any other questions about the backstage part? So we can stay online for some time. But yeah, thanks a lot to everyone else who participated.
I think.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. I think I'll just have a look at the plugin that is already there for the backstage, and from there we can find out what we need to do, and first of all we can break down the functional part of that, and later we can decide how to implement that. But I was also thinking we should also discuss this with the mentors. Is there anything in their mind that they want to implement?
So basically take your time. So we still have plenty of time until the deadline. Just study what we have with Keptn backstage and start collecting your use cases. Meanwhile, I will try to push in the working group about putting the use cases as GitHub issues. And if needed, we can organize a special project meeting for this working group so that we can discuss further what we want to do. Okay. Because I already have a quite a good demo by Dmitry, but I'm just not sure that I'm allowed to publish it. Maybe he would like to present on his own.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you too, and yeah, have a nice day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.